Okay. This is where I admit that I'm stupid. How's everybody doing? So we got a little bit of a list here. The first one is to change the starter. The story behind that is, about the day after I posted the last video, I tried to take this thing out to the field. I forgot to turn on the fuel, and it died in the middle of the lane, and it wouldn't turn over anymore. It couldn't turn it over on the crank pulley, couldn't turn it over by dragging it. I, not gonna lie, was very discouraged. Come to find out, this starter, the bin pack's in here, is stuck out. You can slightly push it in, but it's definitely stuck out. As soon as it stuck out, I went ahead, put a flywheel, or put a pry bar down there on that flywheel, and it rolled over easily. So, I guess, in theory, I should have started with that instead of taking the whole engine apart and doing the whole rigmarole. But you know what? That's an original 1949, made in, I believe, July of 1949 starter. We're going to change it because don't want to do that again. Next thing up here on the list is to change the carburetor. So, as you know, this is the original carburetor. In the first video I showed you, all we did was put it in the ultrasonic cleaner, and when I did that, it did get it to the point that it would run, but with your choke knob and your throttle, you have to sit here and play this magical game of, can I get it to run well without running away? Next up is install water temperature gauge. All we have right now is an oil pressure gauge. I would really like to know what the water temperature is, because I plan to bush hog and mow with this, and typically you get a bunch of stuff up in your radiator. Even from the little bit of work that we were doing before, we're already starting to get things in the radiator, and it's easy to overheat a tractor with that. Change the PTO shaft. The PTO shaft, I believe I said it in one of my previous videos, right here is smaller than the standard PTO shaft. I did not realize that tractors originally came with an 1.125" PTO shaft size. I need an 1 3/8 to fit all my implements, and I was very shocked by that. I tried to look up an adapter. I don't really have a good adapter option, because another thing that you'll notice down here on this PTO shaft is that there's no locking groove across the splines here. There is a hole to go through here, but when I started researching how people remedied this situation, they either bought an adapter that a bolt or a pin went through this hole in the PTO shaft and then stuck out quite farther out, or they replaced the entire shaft inside this assembly. Well, the shaft was about the same price as the adapter, so might as well just change out the shaft, not have to use an adapter. That way it works with all my implements. And then fix alternator wires and make sure that it works. So our alternator was not charging the battery at all. At first, when I thought the motor was stuck again, I thought that was the issue, that the battery died first, and then I realized my dumb butt didn't turn on the fuel. So I started poking and prodding around with a multimeter, figured out that the wire, or exciter wire, did not have any juice going to it. So I have the exciter wire coming up here to the switch to power on the alternator. And as soon as we get this running again with the new carburetor and the new starter, we're going to put a multimeter up here on the battery and make sure that it's charging. For the PTO shaft, I'm actually going to do that here in a couple days. I'm going to borrow my father's four-post lift, and I read on a forum that if you got this thing parked in a deep enough ditch, you didn't have to drain any of the fluid out of the rear end or the transmission. Makes sense, all the fluid would be sloshing forward. So we are going to simulate a ditch by putting these back tires onto the lift and not the front tires, and we're just going to lift it up. Of course, I'm going to strap it down to the lift so it doesn't roll off or hurt anybody, but I would like to keep the fluid that's in it. Again, trying to save as much money with this project as possible. Another thing that I did do is I replaced this brake lever arm. I got this piece right here. It goes through this shackle, and then this brake lever arm actually clamps down onto it. The tractor basically has no brakes, but it gives me warm and fuzzies that I can at least try to hit the brakes, you know? Yeah, you know. All right, I'm going to set up a couple time lapses of me doing this work and try to get on with this video. Thank you. What we're about to do is clear off these tools. I hope that I didn't mess up the timing too bad when I did this. I did have to cherry rig this a little bit to get this clamp back on there. I think I'm going to come up with a separate solution, but right now she ain't going anywhere. But turn the fuel on, turn our key on, see what she does. If I can get her out of gear. There we go. Well, that's concerning, isn't it? Huh. It's not touching the flywheel. Well, I wonder if I loosen it up. I wonder if my other housing will work with this starter. If not, then this might be a longer video than I expected. Which, you know, I guess wouldn't surprise me too much. There's a little bit of wiggle room in this, but not much. Not enough to be like, hey, we're shimming it up like we would a small block Chevy. That's fully seated down and towards the flywheel. And crank these back down. That's tight. That's tight. Well, put you guys back on time-lapse mode. Take this back off of there. And I guess I'm going to compare it closer to the other one. See if I can piece two starters together. Maybe. Maybe take the motor off this one, put it on that housing with that bin packs. No, not without that bin packs. Put this bin packs on it. I don't know. Put you guys back on time-lapse mode so you can watch me do this all over again. Okay. This is where I admit that I'm stupid. Yep. That would cause that not to come out. Damn it. Well, good practice, huh? Install it for the second time. See how fast we can get. I'm going to save you guys the time lapse of this as I sit here and cuss and discuss with myself just how stupid that is. I realized that when I showed you guys that, I wasn't exactly explaining. This is what was wrapped around that shaft, and that gear that you saw needs to extend whenever you engage the starter. So it's actually what comes out and grabs onto the flywheel, those teeth that I showed you earlier. So this was stopping it from doing that. I mean, good on them for making sure that nothing's going to be damaged during shipping, and bad on me for not looking at that, because you know that'll do it, huh? So let's test this again, please. Very pretty, please. Well, that's a lot better. Woo! Jeez. Okay. Up next will be the carburetor. It didn't sound like our timing was too off either. It fired right up. So, and this isn't going anywhere. I might give it a few extra on that bolt down there just to make sure it doesn't move anywhere. Yes, I know you'll judge me for that, but you're already judging me because of the starter situation. Let's face it. Right? Right. Okay. Pick you guys up. Take you back around. And we'll get you guys situationed over here to look at our starter. Put this on a time-lapse mode also. Or I'm sorry, not starter. Our carburetor. So... see, I am frustrated. Can't even talk. But I'll get this going. I'm going to shut off the fuel. Probably run it until it runs dry on fuel. That way I don't have too much dripping out of this line. That is already dripping. Cool. We'll solve that too. Why not? Sounds good. Sounds like a plan. Carburetor's on. It is definitely a knockoff carburetor. It's nothing nearly as good as OEM, but you know what? It might work. This fuel filter, definitely a cheap one off Amazon. And the reason why I already know that is it's sitting here leaking. So, good note on that. But I got the fuel turned back onto it. Fuel's actually in the fuel filter. Let's take things that are going to fall on our toes, because you know I always wear work appropriate footwear, as you can tell through my videos. But that's all cleared off. Turned on the key. Let's pump it and see what happens. First off, that is zero choke, which I couldn't get it to really rev that high very well before that. So that's awesome. Second off, I need to turn down the idle, most definitely. It seems, looking all the way back inside here, that that's easier said than done. Much easier said than done. I'm going to work on figuring out how to get a screwdriver back there. Because, you know, having the screws on this side. No. We're not paid to think. Remember that. Not paid to think. We're paid to do. Wait, I'm not even paid for this at all, am I, Roger? Huh. Alright. So, since I've installed the eBay carburetor, I can't get it to idle down now. I have the idle speed adjustment screw backed all the way out. The idle fuel mixture, I turned it all the way in till it lightly touched, and then backed it out 1.5, and then the main jet I did all the way till it touched, and then backed it out 1 1/4. What I'm thinking is that it's probably hard to beat the original. I think what I might do is go ahead and order a rebuild kit for this. I can right now, with this the way it is, drive it down to my dad's shop. It's like less than 3/4 of a mile away. But with that, like that, I guess I would just rather have the original hardware on it. So I'm going to find a rebuild kit for that carburetor. Hopefully Amazon has one. Basically just need the gaskets. And then I'm probably going to throw that back on there with a real live gasket that I have left over from this carburetor. So I think that's going to be my best plan so far. It's just, I mean, at least it proves that I can go through the RPMs. Now I just have too much RPMs. So like I said, my main goal is to rebuild the original carburetor and not use this knockoff one. When I took this carburetor apart to throw it in the ultrasonic cleaner, I fully blew it apart, took all the needles and everything out of it. Sort of like what we have right here with the knockoff one, except I took out the main jet tube and went ahead and removed the needle seat and the idle screw, or I'm sorry, the idle adjustment screw for the air fuel mixture. And I personally always wondered, A, why do these knockoffs not work that well? B, can I get away with just a normal rebuild kit, or do I need C, the premium kit? Well, let's answer A first. This is our Venturi. This Venturi lives inside of here, and just like it suggests, it takes air, sucks up everything. You gotta remember that this is the top of the carburetor, and it's an updraft carburetor, but it helps make all the suction that helps bring the fuel out of the bowls through all the passages and hit all the jets. Well, the Venturi, just on the casting itself, like that's pretty jagged. It's not the cleanest casting at all. It's actually quite concerning. So with that, what I did is I took the brass wire brush to the entire outside of this thing, cleaned it up, blew it apart, took all the vents apart, took the arms out of the butterfly arms, like on the throttle and the choke, and I put it in the ultrasonic cleaner. Made sure I could see light through all the jets with no obstructions. As soon as I could do that, I started to reassemble it, but then I realized I didn't have the gasket. I have ordered a premium rebuild kit for this thing, but since I want to work on this thing on Monday down the road, I'm stealing this gasket out of the knockoff because the holes line up just fine, and stealing a few other things. For instance, when the throttle arm right here goes inside, there's an ability and a concern. Sorry, trying to do this all one-handed is a little bit weird. But when this throttle arm is inside here, the butterfly plate like that one has, screws right into there and blocks it off. But if there's end play in the end of this, as if the shaft can move inside the housing, you're getting air sneaking through that hole going into there. So what I did was steal the little bitty foam seal thing from this throttle shaft and installed it inside this throttle shaft, which took a lot of the end play. There's still a little bit, but it's tremendously better than what it used to be. So I haven't used any of the jets, floats, or anything like that, but I have made a rebuild kit out of the cheap one. Hopefully when I install this thing, I can get it to run well enough to drive 3/4 of a mile down the road and complete the PTO shaft. I will complete this reinstall later today. So during that time lapse, I turned the fuel on, bagged up all my extra parts, and we're gonna fire it up, see what happens. That fuel filter's still leaking, I know. But for proof of concept, make sure that we're all the way down. So to get it fired up, I had to pull out the choke. So I'm gonna sit here and play with choke and the throttle, see if I can get it running for a little bit. I borrowed a smoke leak detector machine from Joe. Basically what this is a glorified fog machine, but able to run off of 12 volt, of course. But if you follow this black hose down, it comes up, and this fog machine is going into this cone right here that I have plugged into the carburetor behind that fuel filter. What this does is it pumps smoke into whatever side of the engine, and we're going to see where we're getting an air leak from. That will be explained why that's so important later. But from the initial test that I ran on this thing, these throttle linkages back here, all the way back here, and that's the choke linkage, and the throttle linkage is up there. If you watch this, if I can get everything positioned here, if you watch, I believe this is where we're leaking air. So turning on the smoke machine now. So it's going to take it a minute to fill up. You see all that creeping out of there? So we are leaking air around the shafts of the butterflies, which would be a good reason of why we're not able to do any screw adjustments here or here to get this thing to run. Right now I have to basically choke the carburetor 3/4 of the way and keep it there just to get it to run, and then I can't get it to take any throttle. Another thing that we're going to check while we're looking at things in here is we're going to check the intake manifold. So the intake and the exhaust are tied together right up here, but right where the carburetor goes into and then makes this 90-degree is where that manifold allows the air and fuel mixture ratio to go into the engine. So I'm going to turn this machine back on. We're going to watch for smoke up here and try to discern it from... Actually, you know what? I'm going to pop off that carburetor real quick, and then we're going to hook that adapter straight up to the intake manifold and isolate it so we're not getting confused with all the smoke coming out of the linkage arms. Okay, carburetor's off. What I'm going to do is take the tip of this, shove it up into this intake manifold, and see if we get a leak. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get a full-on seal in here, so we might get a little bit dripping out of here. But what we're looking for is smoke rising out of anywhere around this intake manifold, just to make sure that we're not getting extra air into the system. Hopefully I can get a good seal with this. By the way, if you want to see what this smoke machine does without that being plugged in, it literally just shoots out a stream of smoke like so. There we go, you can see it a little bit better. But like I said, it's like a giant vape or a fog machine, and just fills up the cavity with smoke, and then if it has any flow coming out of it, you'll be able to identify it really easily. So here we go. That feels like we might get a seal in there. Go ahead and turn this thing on. Not quite sealed on the bottom. You can actually hear the air coming out. Okay, now I got a seal. Looking at it, there's a slight leak up top. But nothing that I would actually worry about compared to that carburetor earlier, because this has actually got quite a bit of pressure on it. Let's see if we can hear it after I unplug it. Yeah, hear all that pressure coming out? So we were actually pressurizing inside there. Yeah, look at all of that coming out of there. So you got to remember that this is pulling a vacuum, and we're pressurizing it with positive pressure. So I would say that completely is within range of what it needs to be. The carburetor leaking outside of the linkage like that is not where it needs to be. Okay, let me go inside, get out my colored pencils and some pictures, and show you what's going on. Because again, the current situation is we're not able to run the motor without it being 3/4 of the way choked. And when it's at idle, it's higher than what it should be on RPMs of idle. These screws aren't making any difference of up or down, making any adjustments to RPMs, or if it'll take throttle or not. So let's go inside and show you guys that stuff. This is going to be a little bit more of the educational part, and me diagnosing and working through with you what I've been diagnosing. So this is a cutaway of the carburetor. You have your choke, which is that lever arm that we saw leaking, and you have your throttle blade, which is the other lever arm that's leaking. So right now, no matter with this throttle plate all the way closed, let me get a different color for that. So we'll go with black for positions on this. So with the throttle blade all the way closed like this, we're not able to get the engine to idle down. It's currently running away with the RPMs. So as you can see, the idle air adjustment needle lets the vacuum, because you got to remember that air and fuel start getting mixed in this chamber up here, and they get to go up this tube up into the engine. There's also air and fuel being mixed within here that gets injected above the throttle plate when it is closed. So we have to currently choke the engine about 3/4 of the way, limiting even more air that's getting to the engine. So with that, let's say that's about like this. So you still have air gaps in between here getting into here. So get our blue marker to represent some air here. Air's coming in, coming up, and then getting mixed into this chamber within here, within the venturi. So what that tells me is that the fuel mixture is too lean. You'll hear people say lean and fat. What lean is that there's too much air, not enough fuel, when fat is too much fuel, not enough air. Lean is technically more powerful, but if you're too lean, your engine won't run. Fat, they call it fat and happy, because the fatter of a fuel mixture compared to the air, the less you're going to hurt parts within your engine. So during my tests, I was sitting here adjusting the idle screw and the main jet adjustment needle, and it was not fixing any, sorry about that, it was not fixing any of the symptoms that I was having. No matter what, it still had to be 3/4 of the way choked, and I could not move this blade at all without just killing the engine, the throttle blade. So that means one of two things. That means that either fuel that's coming into this circuit of the idle circuit is getting blocked. Get out my purple marker for fuel. So there's fuel in here, there's fuel down these, and fuel will be inside of this chamber. So fuel and fuel up this main needle. So even though I was allowing more fuel into the idle air into this passage, or even letting more fuel through the main metering jet, it wasn't taking it. So there was a possibility that one of these passageways is blocked, and I'm still not getting enough fuel to go in there. The other scenario would be that there's too much air coming into here. So this, I mean, it shouldn't be massively airtight inside of here, but if we're leaking air up into here, it's going to thin out this air to fuel mix ratio. And even though this is 3/4 of the way closed, we're getting more air coming from this source. So right now, what it screams to me from our smoke test is that air is coming around these seals within these shafts and allowing way too much air to come in there to get the right air to fuel mixture to have proper combustion within the engine. So that means that I need a true real life rebuild kit. Now, you can look it up on Amazon. There's rebuild kits, and then you can look it up on other websites, and then there's more expensive rebuild kits that are probably about twice the price as the ones that's on Amazon. What's the difference? The main difference is that you will not get the seals or shafts to replace and fix these two air leaks. Those more advanced or premium kits of a rebuild kit will give you those different shafts. They'll also give you all the nozzles inside of here to replace all of that. So I have ordered one of those, but it won't be here till next week. Our test that we just did right now, or just a few minutes ago, tells me that I have to wait for that rebuild kit. I originally today was going to throw back on the knockoff carburetor and try to make it run, but I'd rather have the OEM one. I wish I had a scale to show you the difference in just the weight of the carburetors. This original carburetor probably weighs a pound or two more than the cheap knockoff carburetor. Okay, So here's another thing that was throwing me for a loop. The governor. Make sure that this is in frame. So again, right here's our carburetor that we've been looking at on the tractor, and this is the throttle rod. Where you adjust the throttle up on the dash is all the way up here. If you notice, that linkage comes down, it does not even touch the throttle rod yet, and comes down and pulls on a spring for the governor. And then the governor is actually what moves the throttle rod in and out to move that top throttle plate on the carburetor. Again, we're talking about this one here. So when I did get it to run, it started to go really high RPMs. Like the throttle blade was opening up. No matter what I did up here on the dash, it wouldn't change it. And that's because there's a spring in here and the governor was controlling the throttle. So when I think of a governor, I think of something like a rev limiter. Basically, if the engine goes too high in RPMs, this would kick in and override your throttle ride input and make sure that you don't over rev the motor and blow it up. But good old Massey Ferguson, or I'm sorry, just Ferguson, they didn't get with Massey yet, designed a system that basically helps you get more throttle whenever the engine is lugging down. So the way to think about this is that, by the way, this image right here is your throttle from the top side of this dash. If I set the throttle at this position because I want to go this speed, we're going to call this a speed selection. What it does is that the governor tries to maintain that speed no matter what. So if you're digging into the ground, slowing down the tractor, or pulling something heavy, instantly the governor is going to sit here and pull more on this throttle in this direction to get more throttle in here so you can go the same speed that you selected up here on the dash. I did not realize that it did that. So if I have video in here, I'm not exactly sure, it's been over the last few days, of it running, but it seems to be running way too high to be at idle. Part of the reason was this throttle rod right here was getting moved by the governor. So after disconnecting this pin right here, hey, it's even labeled pin, and having the throttle rod sit there and just rest with the butterfly fully closed, the top of the carburetor, this butterfly here was fully closed in this position. That's when I got the symptoms of this being at 3/4 of a choke and still getting too much air coming up into there. At first I couldn't tell if it was air or fuel until we did that smoke test. So hopefully, for those of you that know how carburetors work and everything, that was a bit of a waste of time. But for those of you that might not be as familiar with carburetors, that might have been really helpful. So that is our current scenario. I am currently waiting on parts to show up. After the parts do show up, I'm going to rebuild that carburetor again. In the meantime, I know I've ultrasonic cleaned this carburetor 4 times in about 150 degree to 170 degree water with Dawn dish soap and Evapo-Rust. I'm going to dunk this into a Kim dip carburetor cleaner bucket, like old school, and just let it sit. That way it's got the best chance for all these little passages that the fuel and the air comes through to sit there and mix. No, I guess these should have been purple dots. But if I give that enough time sitting in there, and I also got a torch cleaning tip and the air compressor, I'm going to blow through all the passages, shove torch tips inside of them, give it the best shot of being clean as possible. That and new gaskets all the way around so it's not leaking air into anywhere inside here that shouldn't be. Should be good enough to get this thing running. And then after that is running, I will go through readjusting this governor to make sure that it's not pulling on the throttle when I don't want it to, especially at idle. But things I'm learning, and you're going along the journey with me. So I guess I will see you guys in the next video. Thank you very much for watching.